All right, good evening. Welcome back to another Classic Comics live stream. Quite some interesting stories this week. This week, big rumors about big names maybe stepping down from their positions. And also, of course, we've had some pretty significant deaths. I don't usually cover that stuff here, but I don't know. There have been so many. And of course, one of them was particularly significant. So I'll take a look at that. And I guess we'll just go ahead and get into it here. So the first big one, of course, this came out, what was it, right at the beginning of the week, I think, when this story was out that Kathleen Kennedy was maybe gonna be leaving, gonna be stepping down, retiring, and leaving Lucasfilm. Of course, a lot, a lot of people in the fandom began to celebrate when they heard this, but the celebration was short lived because then just a day or two later, well, I can bring this up. Turned out, no, that is not the case necessarily. So this is from IGN.com. Lucasfilm President Kathleen Kennedy responds to retirement reports confirms Star Wars succession plan. So she did admit that there was a sort of exit strategy in mind, but she's not going anywhere anytime soon. Uh, Quote, Lucasfilm President Kathleen Kennedy has responded to reports that she is set to retire later in 2025. Earlier this week, Puck News claimed the veteran film producer was looking to retire at the end of her contract this year. Additionally, Puck claimed Kennedy previously considered retiring in 2024, but decided to hold off on making a decision. While Variety reported that a source close to Kennedy called Puck's story pure speculation, the Hollywood Reporter confirmed the report. Now, Kennedy has responded herself. According to Deadline, Kennedy is working with Disney boss Bob Iger on a succession plan 13 years into the job with Star Wars Rebels creator and current Lucasfilm chief creative officer Dave Filoni, apparently in a strong position to take on the role. However, she insisted, quote, the truth is I want to just say loud and clear, I am not retiring. I will never retire from movies, she continued. I will die making movies. This is the first thing that's important to say. I am not retiring. Well, Kennedy confirmed that Lucasfilm has, quote, every intention of making an announcement months or a year down the road on an eventual succession. She is continuing to stay at Lucasfilm. That involves producing the upcoming Mandalorian movie and a Star Wars film from Deadpool and Wolverine director Sean Levy. It sounds like plans are very much in the works for Kennedy to step down from her current role as president of Lucasfilm, but that doesn't mean she is leaving the company behind or retiring from the movie business. I'm not going to be here forever, she said. George Lucas asked me 13 years ago to step in, and now I'm looking at who's going to replace me. As I said, we have a bench of people internally to handle the business, the creative side. The job has grown also since I stepped in. There was no streaming. There weren't a lot of the things that we're involved in right now going on, so it has grown. Kennedy also denied that she was being, quote, pushed aside or, quote, in need of being replaced, insisting that she was, quote, absolutely not the case, or that was absolutely not the case, and, quote, could not be further from the truth. Her tenure includes overseeing a new sequel trilogy that comprises Star Wars episodes 7 through 9, as well as the start of the Star Wars streaming era that includes The Mandalorian, Book of Boba Fett, and/or Ahsoka Skeleton Crew, and The Acolyte. Yeah, that's quite a legacy. While some films like Star Wars The Force Awakens were blockbuster hits, other projects have proven divisive, and some, such as Solo a Star Wars Story, lost money. Solo lost money. That's true. Deadline asked Kennedy point blank whether she will step down as Lucasfilm boss this year, and she replied to say she didn't know, quote, at this stage, but confirmed it would be, quote, 100% my decision. Kennedy wouldn't say whether Filoni was in line for the top job. Yeah, so basically, don't hold your breath. She's probably not going anywhere anytime soon. Hello, Adega. Hey, good to see you, sir. Thank you for being here. Always glad to have you. And it's just what she said, and she said it outright. She basically said, "It'll be my decision." In other words, she's going to go when she's good and ready, and she's not going to go a minute before. Now, it does seem like at least that her eventual stepping down from the head. I mean, but it's not even clear she's going to be, because she said she's not retiring. So, I mean, does this even mean if someone takes over being head of Lucasfilm, does that even mean she's leaving Lucasfilm? She may still stick around uh, in some capacity, maybe as, I don't know, consultant or something, or I don't know. But the point is she's not going away. And I mean, honestly, at this point, even if she did, I mean, what difference does it make? I mean, the damage is done. I mean, the Lucasfilm story group would still be there, right? And really, even more than Kennedy, that's what needs to change. It's that story group. I mean, and that's the same. It's the same whether, people are all excited about Star Trek and, oh, because Blue Sky, who's taking over Star Trek, they maybe want Kurtzman gone. But, if he goes, what difference does it make? If they don't get better writing, they don't do better stories, it's not going to matter. And it's kind of the same thing here. If they don't replace that story group, and I mean, they just need to clean house. It's like oh, what's the story? Hercules, when he does his 12 labors and he's got to clean the stables. I forget, it was some king's stables that were like really, really filthy, and he diverts a river that comes in and basically flows into the stables and cleans them out. And that's kind of what they need to do with Lucasfilm and with Star Trek too, really. So, like I say, it doesn't really make much difference, I think. But my good lord, when you look at all the stuff listed out that she's done since taking over Star Wars, I mean, look, you may not like the episode 7, 8, 9, and of course, who does? Most of us don't, I don't think. But the fact of the matter is, those movies made a good bit of money. But it also seems pretty clear that maybe at this point, Star Wars, the days of Star Wars being a box office success are pretty much over because, well, Rogue One did well also, but then Solo flopped. And I think it's a pretty safe conclusion that this Mandalorian movie is probably going to fail. I mean, because what has this Mandalorian movie really got going for it? The Mandalorian's not that popular. I mean, what is it? What has it got going for it? Baby Yoda. He's. I mean, I don't know about anyone else, but I'm over Baby Yoda. I'm sick of that stupid puppet. I don't want to see it anymore. And what else have they got? Maybe a Ray movie. I mean, and on the streaming side, it's not much better. I mean, because you've got, what do we got? We got 3 seasons of Mandalorian. And seasons 1 and 2 were okay-ish. I didn't hate them. They're kind of, I mean, and the thing is, it's like what are they, like 8 episodes? It's like 8 episodes, and each episode is barely like 40 minutes long. And even those seem kind of padded out. I mean, there's 8 episodes, and there's maybe like 4 episodes of story worth of story. And then season 3 was crap. Then you had what we've got, The Acolyte, that was crap. Book of Boba Fett, that was unfortunately pretty much crap. I've heard the first season of Andor is good. I have never watched it. I think the issue with that one is it just came along at the wrong time because apparently, from what I understand, it's kind of a slow burn. It's kind of a slow building show that you got to be patient with. And I think by the time that show came out, a lot of fans just had no patience left and weren't going to sit here and watch 8 hours of like, okay, maybe this will be get good at some point. Because we've watched too many streaming shows where we're doing that going, okay, it's going to get good somewhere, right? So yeah, I mean, it's just the franchise is in a sad state, and it's largely because of her, and it's not going to change. It's not going to change, even if she leaves, because you can bet that whoever she puts in place is gonna continue her work. Is gonna keep just doing what the kind of stuff she was doing. I don't trust Filoni. I mean, right now, the only person I think who's connected with Lucasfilm that I would at all trust as taking the franchise forward would be Favreau, but I don't know if he really even wants the job. And in any case, he probably wouldn't get it because he probably, Kennedy probably knows he would not do what she wants. So it's probably going to be Filoni who's going to be there to just kind of be her surrogate, effectively. Ugh. Okay. And then that's not the only rumor of a big name in Hollywood stepping down. If I can bring this up. And this is from comicbookmovie.com. Rumor Kevin Feige planning to step down as Marvel Studios president, but not anytime soon. There have been calls for Kevin Feige to step down as president of Marvel Studios for years, even at the height of the MCU's success and popularity. But even some longtime fans of the franchise have now begun to lose faith in Feige's ability to steer the ship. Feige is still the highest grossing film producer of all time, and the projects he's been involved with have a combined worldwide box office gross of over 31 billion. However, the last few Marvel Studios movies, Deadpool and Wolverine aside, have underperformed while also earning mostly negative reviews from critics. After a solid start, Captain America Brave New World dropped by 68% in its second weekend, with a 28.3 million from 4,105 North American theaters. The movie is now approaching 300 million worldwide on a reported production budget of 180 million, but this is before marketing, and some believe the actual budget could be closer to 300 million after extensive reshoots. Even if this information is false, the movie may still struggle to make much of a profit by the end of its run, and this has to be viewed as a disappointing result after the massive success of Deadpool and Wolverine. It's hard to argue with the perception that the MCU simply isn't the world conquering franchise it once was. And a lot of people believe it's time for Feige to hang up his spurs and give someone else an opportunity to get things back on track. Last night, Feige was named as a possible contender to replace Kathleen Kennedy as president of Lucasfilm. And while we're not sure if this is actually in the cards, and apparently, as we just read, it's not, analysts believe it'll probably end up being Dave Filoni. We are hearing that he is planning to step away from Marvel at some point. Scooper My Time to Shine Hello is reporting that Feige is indeed set to retire as Marvel Studios president, but it won't be until after the X-Men reboot is released, which means he will be staying on, quote, top of the mound for at least another 2 or 3 years. It's also worth noting that My Time to Shine Hello reported that Kennedy would be stepping down in 2025 last September. If accurate, this wouldn't necessarily have anything to do with the current state of the studio. Nobody stays in any position forever, and Feige has been running things at Marvel since 2007. No, he hasn't really. I mean, he's had a hand in things, but he hasn't been himself running it all himself since around, 2014, 2015, I think. Something like that. How would you feel about Kevin Feige handing over the reins at Marvel Studios? Let us know in the comments section down below. Because at that point, Ike Perlmutter was still there, and they had the Marvel. What was it called? There was like a committee. It was basically a committee of guys that basically kind of helped guide the Marvel franchise. And he was involved, but he was not just the guy calling the shots. He was not the top guy until they were bought out by Disney, And then a lot of those people were basically Perlmutter was pushed out because he was a Trump guy or supportive of Trump. And then that committee they basically got the boot because Feige didn't want to deal with them. And so I think the stuff Feige himself has been responsible for, really, I think it was maybe right before or right after Winter Soldier. I think maybe kind of after that, it was his stuff. So, I mean, as they say, it's no one's going to be there forever. Is he? I mean, and I don't think that he's done as bad a job as Kennedy has done, certainly, or that Kurtzman has done. Marvel has stumbled, but I think it's still very salvageable. For some of these other franchises, I don't know. Star Wars is in big trouble, and Doctor Who is just like dead. I don't know how you fix that mess. Star Trek is in rough shape, but I think that could be salvaged too, but not easily. But Marvel, I mean, they just need to make a few good movies. And honestly, if these Avengers movies, like if Fantastic Four is good and these Avengers movies, Doomsday and Secret Wars, are good, then it's pretty much going to be back on track. But that's an if, of course. And the question is, who would you bring in to replace him and run things? Well, obviously, Favreau's a guy that leaps to mind since he kind of helped get it all going. But I mean, I don't know. I'm sure Favreau probably wouldn't be the guy because, again, they're not going to get someone who's going to do things the way we want them done. If they would do that, then they're not going to get the nod anyway. All right. Okay. And now, while these are stories about people maybe leaving, there's a story out there about someone maybe returning, a big name returning. Let me bring this up. And this is from Bounding into Comics, I believe. Star Trek legend William Shatner teases possible return as Captain Kirk, says he was so impressed by this writer, but currently waiting to hear what the folks at Paramount have to say. In a development that even the most diehard of Star Trek fans would have likely never seen coming, William Shatner has revealed that he was so impressed with a recent pitch that he may soon be returning to the small screen as the iconic Captain Kirk. The entertainment legend first raised the possibility of another trip to the Final Frontier while making a speaking appearance at the Execute a panel. What the Execute panel with William Shatner is held on February 21st as part of the recent Fan Expo Vancouver. Execute a panel. Oh, okay, I see. Execute a panel with William Shatner. Okay, I see. I misread it. Per a recap provided by the direct's Jennifer McDonough, at one point during his talk, Shatner noted that he not only had been approached by a current Paramount Star Trek writer regarding Kirk's potential revival, but this proposal was surprisingly good. Well, if it's coming from a current era Star Trek writer, I find that hard to believe. Quote, I've been asked to come back as Kirk so many times, said the Canadian actor. If Kirk is going to come back, it has to mean something. It has to be the show. But I was so impressed by this writer, so I said, let's talk after I'm done in Vancouver. So I'm awaiting a pitch to make it the show. It should come on Monday or Tuesday. Following up on his tease a few days later via his personal Twitter account, the exceptionally spry actor informed his fans, well, I don't know if you've heard, I've been approached to resurrect Kirk. Quote, it's still all up in the air, or is it buried under rocks? He added to his emoji-filled post. Whatever the case, I'm waiting to hear what the folks at Paramount have to say. And here's the tweet, I guess. Notably, rather than having flat out denied his willingness to reprise his character-defining role, Shatner has long held that he would consider putting on a Starfleet uniform again, if and only if his role in said project was both meaningful and well executed. Quote, it's an intriguing idea, Shatner told the Canadian press during a May 2024 interview in regards to a possible return. Quote, it's almost impossible to make it's almost impossible, but it was a great role and so well written. And if there were a reason to be there, not just to make a cameo, but if there was a genuine reason for the character appearing, I might consider it. As to how Kirk's return could work in current canon, particularly given his death and burial at the end of Star Trek Generations, such a development should pose no trouble given the events seen in the sixth episode of Picard's third season, The Bounty. Therein, as the small team of Worf, Riker, and Seven of Nine explore the inner workings of the Daystrom Station black site, the female Borg rebel discovers that as part of an as yet unexplored experiment known as Project Phoenix, the secretive Section 31 had retrieved Kirk's body from its resting place on Viridian 3 and interred it for experimentation within the base. And there's a screen image. Cloning, science-based revival, time travel. Ultimately, however, Kirk makes his return will be revealed when and hopefully if Shatner eventually gets the ball rolling on this new project. Okay. So, I know people are excited by this possibility. And I think particularly people are kind of excited because Shatner himself is saying, "Oh, I was really impressed. I really like what I heard, et cetera, et cetera. This is a good idea. I'm on board with it." It's amazing how short fan memories can be. I mean, my guess is if this were to happen, it would be a lot more along the lines of a Dial of Destiny style disappointment than anything else. Look, I love Shatner and love Kirk, of course, and love Star Trek, but like with Dial of Destiny, it just to me this just feels like a bad idea, an idea that is almost doomed to fail. And I haven't heard the pitch, so I don't know what it is. But again, knowing that it's coming from a current Star Trek writer at Paramount, I'd have to see it before I believe it's any good. And I know Shatner has said he likes it and it's a good idea. Yeah, okay, that's great. You know what? Before Star Trek Picard came out, all you heard uh, from Patrick Stewart was about how great the story was and how excited he was to do it and how much he loved it and blah blah blah. And then the first season of Picard was like trash. It was awful. It was garbage. So, the fact that the actor likes it, that doesn't necessarily guarantee that it's going to be good. All that means is that the actor in question has a big part in the story. They've got a lot of lines, and they like what they're going to get to do. That doesn't mean it's going to be good. Because Patrick Stewart, he loved that Picard season 1 story. He was all slobbering all over it. And God, it was awful. And that was after reshoots, after extensive reshoots. Ugh. So, I mean, this doesn't mean much to me, honestly. Oh, he heard a story, he heard a pitch he likes. Great. That doesn't tell me much. And I like I say, I just feel like this is an idea. It's just doomed to fail. It's doomed to be a disappointment. And and this would like it would make us be looking back on the first season of Picard and being like, you know what, Picard wasn't that bad. The same way we look back at the Star Trek prequels now, and say, oh, the prequels weren't that bad. So I hope this doesn't happen. Honestly, I just think it's a bad idea. Okay, and then of course the big news that broke just a few days ago, and there's been a spate of deaths in Hollywood lately, and of course this was the big one. Hollywood Reporter.com, Gene Hackman, Oscar-winning star of The French Connection, dies at 95. Gene Hackman, the versatile leading man renowned for his smoldering performance as hard-nosed New York City narc Jimmy Popeye Doyle in The French Connection, has died. He was 95. The much admired two-time Oscar winner and his second wife, Betsy Arakawa, 64, were found dead Wednesday at their home in Santa Fe, New Mexico. They had lived in a gated community northeast of the city since the 1980s. In a statement to the Santa Fe Mexican newspaper, Santa Fe County Sheriff Adon Mendoza said, quote, "We can confirm that both Gene Hackman and his wife were found deceased Wednesday afternoon at their residence on Sunset Trail. One of their three dogs was also dead." Well, obviously, the other two dogs are the culprits. They were in on this. Uh, I'm kidding. A search warrant ruled that the deaths were, quote, "suspicious enough in nature to require a thorough search and investigation." His daughters, Elizabeth and Leslie, and granddaughter Annie, noted in a statement that Hackman was, quote, "loved and admired by millions around the world for his brilliant acting career, but to us, he was always just dad and grandpa. We will miss him sorely and are devastated by the loss." Hackman, who played gritty and cantankerous characters with a virile, edgy intensity, took home the Best Actor Oscar for his work in William Friedkin's The French Connection in 1971, and earned a supporting trophy for his portrayal of sadistic Sheriff Little Bill Daggett in Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven in 1992. And The French Connection really, you know, it was a movie that really kind of heralded that change in Hollywood, moving away from the sort of the old Hollywood of the 50s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, that post-war Hollywood, and into, an era where they were focusing more on being more gritty and more realistic and more kind of morally gray and darker and all that. He received three other Academy Award nominations for playing Clyde Barrow's older brother Buck in Arthur Pym's Bonnie and Clyde in 1967 for his emotional performance as a son whose aging dad becomes dependent upon him, and Gilbert Cates's I Never Sang for My Father, 1970. I've never heard of that one before. I'm not familiar with that one. And for his turn as a good old boy FBI agent in Alan Parker's anti-segregation drama Mississippi Burning. Yeah, I remember that one. I saw that. Hackman was also terrific as a driven Olympic coach in Downhill Racer in 1969, directed by Michael Ritchie as a brawling ex-con on the road with Al Pacino and Jerry Schatzberg's Scarecrow, a performance that he considered the best of his career, as Harry Call, the paranoid surveillance expert caught up in a murder plot in Francis Ford Coppola's masterful The Conversation, and as the win-at-all-cost Indiana high school basketball coach in David Onspaugh's Hoosiers. While generally associated with volatile, no-nonsense roles, Hackman also possessed an adroit comic sensibility. Witness Young Frankenstein, where he killed it as a blind hermit. Superman as bad guy Lex Luthor. Get Shorty playing a sleazy movie producer. The Birdcage as a right-wing senator for director Mike Nichols. And the Royal Tenenbaums as the patriarch of a dysfunctional family of geniuses created by Wes Anderson. That was probably the last movie he did that was like kind of a big deal, that Royal Tenenbaums. After that, he didn't do a whole lot. Hackman's searing turn as the hyper gum-smacking Doyle in the documentary-style French Connection distinguished him as a leading man. Friedkin's first choice for the role had been Jackie Gleason. Wow, I never knew that. I mean, how old was Jackie Gleason at that point? I had no idea that's who he had in mind. The story was based on a 1969 nonfiction book by Robin Moore that described how narcotics detectives Eddie Egan and Sonny Grosso dismantled a drug smuggling ring in the early 1960s that netted 120 pounds of heroin. The film also won Academy Awards for Best Picture, Best Director, Adapted Screenplay, and Editing. In his Oscar acceptance speech, Hackman thanked, quote, "Mr. Billy Friedkin, who has already received his prize tonight, but I have to thank him because he really brought me through this when I wanted to quit." Eastwood had to convince Hackman to join him on Unforgiven. Quote, "I don't want to do another violent picture. I'm tired of it. I've been involved with a lot of them. The director in a 2009 interview recalled Hackman telling him, quote, I said, I know exactly where you're coming from. Read it again because I think we can make a really great statement against violence and killing if we do this right. Hackman once explained his creative approach by saying, each scene I look for something not written down. Interesting. So looking at the subtext, I guess. After being honored with the Cecil B. DeMille Award at the 2003 Golden Globes and appearing as a former U.S. president who returns to Maine to run for mayor in Welcome to Mooseport in 2004, Hackman retired from acting and wrote novels. No, I didn't know he was writing. Eugene Allen Hackman was born on January 30th, 1930, in San Bernardino, California, raised by his maternal grandmother in Danville, Illinois. After his father abandoned the family, Hackman talked his way into the Marine Corps at the age of 16. He trained as a radio operator and did tours as a disc jockey in the Pacific. Oh, okay. So he was. So he was basically a disc jockey in the Marine Corps. I didn't know that. I knew he was in the Marine Corps. So I always thought he was like this, hard ass warfighter, but apparently not. Following his discharge, Hackman enrolled briefly at the University of Illinois, studying journalism and television production, and at New York School of Radio Technique, which helped him land radio jobs in the Midwest. But at the age of 30, Hackman decided to become an actor. Returning to Southern California, he took classes at the Pasadena Playhouse, where he met another hopeful actor, Dustin Hoffman. Both were voted least likely to succeed by classmates. They set out for New York City in 1956 to pursue work on the stage, and at one time roomed with a certified public accountant named Peter Falk and palled around with Robert Duvall. Hackman drove a moving van to make ends meet. Hackman landed his first stage role in 1958 in an off-Broadway production of Chaparral, then appeared on TV in the United States Steel Hour, The Defenders, and Naked City, and in an uncredited role in the 1961 film Mad Dog Call. I guess that's how you say that. His work as Jessica Walter's crass husband in Lilith in 1964, a psychological drama set in a mental institution that starred Warren Beatty, won Hackman recognition and led to him being cast in Bonnie and Clyde as the buffoonish Buck Barrow. Hackman, at age 36, deemed too young for the role, had been fired 3 weeks into rehearsal for another landmark 67 film, The Graduate, for which he was to play Hoffman's father in law. The part went to Murray Hamilton. And I guess Murray Hamilton, I believe Murray Hamilton, he's the guy that played the mayor of Amity in Jaws, isn't he? I believe that's him, Murray Hamilton. In 1971, Hackman received his second career supporting Oscar nomination for I Never Sang for My Father, starring as a widowed college professor and son of an aging father, played by Melvin Douglas, who needs care. Years after the release of The French Connection, he said, quote, people on the street still call me Popeye. I wish I could have had another hit and a new nickname. Hackman was busy in the 70s. His work included the disaster film The Poseidon Adventure. Yep, remember that one. And a French Connection sequel. And the regimen left him exhausted. He took a sabbatical at the end of the decade, returning in 1981 to perform in Beatty's Reds. I remember that film. I've never seen it. It was like 3 hours long, and it looked like really I mean, I was like 12, and it looked really boring. I wasn't gonna watch that. He followed with an eclectic range of films, including a comic outing with Barbra Streisand in All Night Long. He played a hard-nosed retired Marine colonel in Uncommon Valor. Yeah, that's a pretty good movie. That's a good kind of military action film, Uncommon Valor. And high school coach Norman Dale, who leads his team to a miraculous state title in the Hoosiers. And Uncommon Valor, it's one of those movies, if I remember right, it's about, it's a bunch of guys who go into Vietnam to retrieve POWs that have been left behind, that were never released after the war. It's like a canon film, but a canon film it was like good, if it had a good cast and a good budget and everything. Quote, I took Hoosiers at a time that I was desperate for money, he told GQ in a 2011 interview. Quote, I took it for all the wrong reason, and it turned out to be one of those films that stick around. I was from that era of the country, and I knew of that event, strangely enough. We filmed 50 miles from where I was brought up. So it was kind of bizarre feeling. I never expected the film to have the kind of legs that it's had. Pardon me a moment. I need to take a drink of water here. Okay. He also starred with Kevin Costner in the political thriller No Way Out in 1987. Yeah, that's a good movie. In the early 90s, Hackman experienced health problems and underwent heart surgery and turned down a chance to play Hannibal Lecter in The Silence of the Lambs. I didn't know that. Huh. That would have been interesting. But he was stellar in The Firm in 1993, Crimson Tide in 95, Extreme Measures 96, John Grisham's The Chamber, and as the U.S. president in Absolute Power, again with Eastwood, and Twilight, 1998 with Paul Newman and Susan Sarandon. Twilight. I don't. I'm trying to remember what that Twilight was about. I don't remember, but I remember that Absolute Power. If I remember right, he plays the president, but he's like basically he's like a perv and kind of a sicko. And like at the beginning of the movie, of course, he's like set up with a hooker, and he's like a sadist. He likes to beat his these hookers he meets, and he goes too far and kills her. And of course, then there's a cover up, and Clint Eastwood's investigating, I believe. His more recent films included Enemy of the State, the football comedy The Replacements, Under Suspicion, Behind Enemy Lines, and the David Mamet thriller Heist. After Hackman and his first wife, Faye Maltese, divorced in 1986, he met Arakawa, a classically trained pianist, while she was working part time in a California fitness center. They wed in 1991, and she became stepmother to his daughters and son, Christopher. Quote, you go through stages in your career that you feel very good about yourself, then you feel like, why didn't I choose something else? He said in the GQ interview, but overall, I'm pretty satisfied that I made the right choice when I decided to be an actor. I was lucky to find a few things that I could do well. And, he's of the actors that were living still, of course, before his passing, he was, one of the biggest, I guess, most storied actors in Hollywood. I think the only one you would look at and say is clearly bigger or more legendary or more iconic would be Clint Eastwood himself. He's pretty much it. There's no more legendary or more iconic person in Hollywood right now. Pretty much. I mean, there are some that are close. I think you can make arguments for. I guess Pacino and De Niro come to mind. Robert Redford also. That's kind of it. Um, those guys. And of course, being in Hollywood as long as he was and as well known as he was, there were plenty of accolades and people coming out to praise him. And I got into a story about that. And again, this is the Hollywood Reporter. Francis Ford Coppola, Clint Eastwood, mourn inspiring and magnificent two-time Oscar winner. Francis Ford Coppola, Clint Eastwood, Viola Davis, Mel Brooks, Antonio Banderas, and Paul Feig were among those mourning two-time Oscar winner Gene Hackman, who was found dead alongside his wife Betsy and dog at his home in Santa Fe, New Mexico on Wednesday. Their deaths have been ruled suspicious as of Thursday morning amid an ongoing investigation. Quote, is with great sadness that we announce the passing of our father, Gene Hackman, and his wife Betsy, said Hackman's daughters in a statement to the Hollywood Reporter on Thursday. Coppola, who directed Hackman in 1974's The Conversation, wrote on Instagram, quote, the loss of a great artist always cause for both mourning and celebration. Gene Hackman is a great actor, inspiring and magnificent in his work and complexity. I mourn his loss and celebrate his existence and contribution. Said Eastwood in a statement, quote, there was no finer actor than Gene, intense and instinctive, never a false note. He was also a dear friend who I will miss very much. Viola Davis added, quote, loved you in everything, the conversation, the French connection, the Poseidon adventure, unforgiven, tough, yet vulnerable. You were one of the greats. God bless those who loved you. Rest well, sir. And Banderas said this was, quote, a very sad day for the cinema's family, sharing his condolences for friends, family, and cinema lovers. Feig called the news, quote, so awful, adding, Gene was such an inspiration to so many of us who love movies. So many brilliant roles. His performance in The Conversation alone changed the way I looked at acting and what actors could bring to a role. Such an amazing career. R.I.P. Mr. Hackman. George Takei called Hackman, quote, one of the true giants of the screen, who, quote, could play anyone who could feel a whole life behind it. Quote, he could be everyone and no one, a towering presence or an everyday Joe. That's how powerful an actor he was. He will be missed and his work will live on forever. John Cusack, who worked with Hackman on 2003's Runaway Jury, took to X to share his condolences. Quote, R.I.P. Gene Hackman, an all-time great, one of the most influential screen actors ever. There was nothing he couldn't do. His work was searingly truthful and often brutally honest. He never let you off the hook, not afraid of ambiguity, a lost quality these days. Lucky and grateful to share screen with him. R.I.P. Gene. And his Unforgiven co-star Saul Rubinek shared the following statement with THR, quote, I was lucky enough to spend a few days acting with Gene in Unforgiven. I remember this, the huge Duck of Death jail scene with him. Duck, I says. And me and Richard Harris was an interior weather cover scene. I mean, scheduled at the last minute because of rain. And Gene's sheriff, Little Bill, had the lion's share of the lines, and Clint liked to shoot the rehearsals. Man, when you were acting with Gene in a situation like that, and on the other side of me is the dangerous presence of the outrageous Richard Harris, I had to be there. I had to show up because Gene set the bar so high without me noticing he was doing that at all. He made it easy. The scene you see in the movie was that filmed rehearsal, the first time we did it. I'll never forget the gift of breathing that shared air. We lost a great artist, but we can visit him forever. In a in a preview clip of Drew Barrymore's March 5th show, Bill Murray said that Gene Hackman, quote, made some of the greatest American movies and spoke about his memories working with him on Wes Anderson's The Royal Tenenbaums. Quote, he won a Golden Globe for the movie, although he didn't show up, but he was really good, Murray said. The guy was really, really good. Ben Stiller, who played Hackman's son in The Royal Tenenbaums, penned a column for the New York Times about his experience working with the venerable actor. There he wrote wrote in part, quote, his movies were deeply embedded in my consciousness. He was one of the four actors on my Mount Rushmore with Al Pacino, Robert De Niro, and Dustin Hoffman. When Gene Hackman said something on screen, you believed him. Stiller shared a link to the column along with this brief note on X, quote, sending love and condolences to Gene and Betsy's family. Gwyneth Paltrow, who played Hackman's daughter in the film, shared a picture of herself and on-screen brother Luke Wilson with Hackman alongside a broken heart emoji. Hank Azaria, who appeared alongside Hackman in The Birdcage, called his time working with the late actor, quote, an honor and an education. He recalled how director Mike Nichols described Hackman's character acting, quote, he always brought just enough of a different part to the real Gene to each role he played. Mel Brooks recalled working with Hackman on Young Frankenstein, revealing how the late actor's friendship with Gene Wilder helped him land the perfect role. Quote, I was privileged to know Gene Hackman because he played tennis with another Gene, Gene Wilder, and that Gene told him about a little role called the Blind Hermit in our movie Young Frankenstein. Do you think Mel would let me play it? I've always wanted to do a comedy, he said. Needless to say, I was over the moon and he was perfect. And I didn't realize that was Gene Hackman for a long time. It was really just, I think, in the last 6, 7 years, maybe back that I realized, oh, that's Gene Hackman. I didn't even know. Tom Hanks argued there's never been a Gene Hackman type. There's only been Gene Hackman, whatever that means. And Kevin Costner, who worked with, quote, his favorite actor multiple times, reshared a video of him talking to Rich Eisen at about a moment he had with Hackman that, as Costner put it, quote, showed me that his generosity and vulnerability ran even deeper than his well of talent. This man was probably, or this moment was probably small for him, but huge for me as an actor, a man, and even a director. My heart is with Gene, his wife, and his family today. I'm lucky to have gotten to learn from him in this life, unquote. Hackman and his wife were found dead with their dog on Wednesday afternoon at their home in Santa Fe, New Mexico. The Santa Fe County Sheriff's investigation is active and ongoing, according to the search warrant affidavit letter obtained by TMZ. The Santa Fe detective who sought the warrant wrote that he believes their deaths to be, quote, suspicious enough in nature to require a thorough search and investigation. Police found, quote, the front door of the residence unsecured and opened. Deputies observed a healthy dog running loose on the property, another healthy dog near the deceased female, and a deceased dog laying 10 to 15 feet from the deceased female in a closet of the bathroom. The heater being moved, the pill bottle being opened, and pills scattered next to the female. The male decedent being located in a separate room of the residence, and no obvious signs of a gas leak. The couple and one of their three dogs were found dead during a welfare check after their neighbor called concerned. No cause of death has yet been revealed. Yeah, so and apparently what I heard or about it was that apparently they were dead for some time. Like they weren't just like they had just died the day before or something like that. They apparently had been dead for a while. And obviously, I mean, all of them, both him and her dead and the dog, obviously it's fishy. Um, the open pill bottle, I mean, without knowing what the pills were, we can only guess. But that does make you wonder if there was, some sort of deliberate self deletion going on. But then what about the dog? That I don't know. So just very sad to hear. And again, as all these people have said, I mean, he was one of the big ones. He was one of the greats in Hollywood, and sad to see him go. As for me, obviously, the first time I really took notice of him was in Superman. Obviously, I don't think I'd really ever heard of him before because I mean I was a kid and I wasn't. He didn't make those kind of movies. I mean. I had never seen The French Connection or The Conversation. As a 9-year-old, I wasn't really inclined towards those movies. But certainly after he did Superman, of course, I was a big fan of that. And of course, he did the sequel. And I caught several of his movies over the year. Crimson Tide's really good. Um, and like I say, Uncommon Valor. I think that's one of his movies that's really good. That's kind of like overlooked and doesn't get a lot of attention. But this was not the only uh, notable name passing away in Hollywood this week. Also, this is again from the Hollywood Reporter. Michelle Trachtenberg, star of Gossip Girl and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, dies at 39. Michelle Trachtenberg, the veteran actress who started as a child performer with high-profile roles like the title character in Harriet the Spy before finding success on Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Gossip Girl, has died. She was 39. Quote, it is with great sadness to confirm that Michelle Trachtenberg has passed away, her rep confirmed to the Hollywood Reporter on Wednesday morning. Quote, the family requests privacy for their loss. There are no further details at this time, unquote. The New York Post was the first to report the news of her death. Trachtenberg was born in New York as the daughter of Jewish immigrants. In a radio interview in 2005, she confirmed that she was fluent in Russian as her mother was born in Russia and it was the only way for her to communicate with her grandparents. She started acting as a toddler, booking a string of commercials from age 3 onward. Her first gig was a spot for Whisk laundry detergent, and she went on to promote Burger King, Kraft macaroni and cheese, and many others. Trachtenberg landed her first TV role in the most New York of ways by appearing in an episode of Law and Order in 1991. Described as a natural talent and a charismatic performer even at a young age, she once said she never took any acting classes as she preferred only to take direction from those behind the camera. Trachtenberg segued to more kid-friendly fare courtesy of Nickelodeon with a role on the Melissa Joan Hart show Clarissa Explains It All, and later with a 14-episode run on The Adventures of Pete and Pete. Then, like her future Buffy co-star Sarah Michelle Gellar, Trachtenberg worked on the New York soap All My Children. Her breakout turn as a child performer came also from Nickelodeon when she landed the title role of the 1996 feature film Harriet the Spy opposite veteran performers like Rosie O'Donnell, Eartha Kitt, and J. Smith Cameron. She was 10 years old at the time. Her family later moved to Brooklyn, where she was raised with an older sister, Irene. At the age of 12, after her acting career started to take off, propelled by the Nickelodeon work, Trachtenberg moved to Los Angeles to pursue more work, though she stated that she remained bi-coastal for a little bit. Quote, it was a little more sheltered, she once said, of her life in Brooklyn before moving to the West Coast. What was really a big switch for me was going from a place where entertainment was prominent but not surrounding, and in LA, I feel like you're constantly surrounded by people in the entertainment business. The work kept coming through the late 1990s, and she landed a series of regular roles on 1977's Mego opposite Bronson Pinchot, Ed Begley Jr., Jonathan Lipnicki, and Will Estes, followed by appearances in the films Inspector Gadget and Can't Be Heaven. TV delivered yet another breakout moment as she was cast as Dawn Summers opposite Geller on the beloved and cult classic Buffy. Summers, the younger daughter of the title character, debuted in the episode of the show's 5th season, and she appeared in every episode of Buffy's remaining 3-season run. Yeah, that's where I first heard of her. I remember when she was came on Buffy. I didn't watch Buffy a lot, but I had friends that did, and so I would catch it from time to time. And Adega says, yeah, never saw any of her stuff. Yeah, I never saw any of that early stuff either. I mean, it was the 90s. I mean, I was like in my 30s by that point. So, or no, I wasn't. I'm sorry. I was in my 20s. Yeah, I was in college and then in my late 20s. So, but still, I mean, I was kind of older. I wasn't watching Nickelodeon shows. I had known Sarah since we worked together on All My Children. We worked together for about 2.5 years, and we had kept in touch through the years when she moved to Hollywood and began building her career from that point. Trachtenberg told the BBC of joining Buffy, quote, I kept in touch with Sarah through the years, and because Buffy had become my real favorite show, I had always tried to think of ways for me to guest star on the show, and I heard about the call one day. Sarah was always very supportive. In addition to Geller, Trachtenberg once talked about being close with peers like Scarlett Johansson, Thora Birch, and Taryn Manning, as they all grew up in the business around the same time. Quote, Thora, Taryn, and I have all been sort of looking for a movie that we can do together because we do like each other, she once said in an interview. Thora, Scarlett Johansson, and I all grew up in New York, not necessarily being like best friends, but we always saw each other in auditions and everything. And now when I see the girls, there's a comfort there. She also found comfort in education. Though her career kept her busy while most teenagers would be in school, Trachtenberg remained focused on her studies. Quote, I have to always have a teacher on set. Education's very important to me. I believe that, God forbid, if this acting thing doesn't work out for me, I have to have a solid background behind me. And I've been raised believing that education is very enriching and very important. And that's the moral that I've applied to my life, she said in the same interview. Quote, I want to go to university one day. I want to go to college and I want to major in the behind the camera stuff. I want to learn how to make movies because I already know what to do if I'm in a movie, and I want to know what to do if I'm trying to make one. Years later, she was accepted to USC, but ended up deferring due to her busy acting schedule, though she had planned to study film. Quote, I would study the history of film. I'd study producing and directing and just the beauty of film, she once said of her future plans. But after Buffy wrapped its run in 2003, Trachtenberg kept busy with on camera work, starring in the classic comedy Eurotrip opposite Jacob Pitts, Scott Meklowitz, Kristen Kruk, and Matt Damon, in the film written and directed by Seinfeld alums Jeff Schaffer, Alec Berg, and David Mandel. Trachtenberg segue to more adult fare in Greg Araki's Mysterious Skin opposite Brady Corbett and Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and the beloved and critically acclaimed HBO series 6 Feet Under. Her other credits include Robot Chicken, Guidance, Sleepy Hollow, NCIS Los Angeles, and Mercy. She had another high profile run on the small screen courtesy of Gossip Girl, playing manipulative socialite Georgina Sparks for 28 episodes. She reprised her role on the HBO Max reboot 3 years ago, which was her final Hollywood credit. She seemed to relish playing an evil character like Georgina. Quote, it's actually kind of easy because the words that they write are so fantastic. It's kind of easy to be evil when you're saying evil things. It's definitely a lot more fun than playing the good girl. I love the reaction you get. I've never understood why some actors don't want to play villains or evil characters, she told 17. Asked by the mag if there are any girls like Georgina where she went to school, Trachtenberg confirmed that there were. Quote, in school, the girls were mean to me and the boys didn't ask me out. I always dreaded going back to school because I knew I would have to face a lot of mean kids, she said. Years later, she elaborated on the bullying in an Instagram post, revealing that it was much worse than she originally let on. Quote, the kids were cruel. There is no need to harp on the past, but I still have scars from being thrown downstairs and slammed into lockers head first, she posted. I write this to every child, teen person out there who is bullied. You are something. Do not put your value in something in someone else. Do let not letting them win is your win. Unquote. In recent months, Trachtenberg found herself speaking out against bullies online after she sparked concern among fans and followers on Instagram after posting a series of selfies. Followers questioned whether she was healthy due to her appearance, while some accused her of having plastic surgery or being under the influence. Trachtenberg faced the critics and clapped back. Quote, fun fact, this is my face, not malnutrition, no problems. Why do you have to hate? Get a calendar. She posted later, following up with a second post. Quote, I've received several comments recently about my appearance. I have never had plastic surgery. I am happy and healthy. Check yourself. Haters. Unquote. At the time, the Hollywood Reporter reached out to Trachtenberg for an interview about her life and career, though the actress declined through a representative. She remained active on Instagram until a few days ago, spending much of the month of February posting throwback photos of red carpet appearances. THR has reached out to the New York Police Department and will update accordingly. Okay, so I mean, like I say, I haven't seen a lot of her stuff. I mean, really. I mean, like I say, I saw a couple of episodes of Buffy, and other than that, I never really watched any of her stuff. So I don't have a whole lot to say about that. It seems that apparently she had, I guess, she had had a liver transplant, and I guess the general wisdom, conventional wisdom, is that she died because of some sort of issue with the liver transplant. I mean, I have no idea if that is the case. Um, Generally, though, I mean, when people get transplants, of course, the body can reject the transplant, and that is fatal. You know, if a body rejects a donated organ, but that usually doesn't happen overnight. People don't just drop dead from that. That's usually something that takes a while. It's a slower process. So the fact that she apparently was more or less okay, or was thought to be okay, and then apparently she was, I guess, found dead by her mother. I don't know. Uh, but maybe that was it. I don't know. When someone who's young, and when she was 39, so not old, dies in Hollywood and there's no obvious reason, I think one of the places your mind tends to go is to maybe this was a self-deletion, or maybe a drug overdose or something. I don't know. But it may have been a issue with the rejected organ, maybe. I believe, for example, that's what happened with Aaron Eisenberg, who played Nog on Deep Space Nine. Because he had, I believe, liver, or not liver, but kidney issues when he was young. I think he was born with bad kidneys. That's why he was so small. because people who are born with defective kidneys, they tend to have growth issues, failure to thrive, I believe is the medical term. And as I understand it, of course, when someone undergoes a organ transplant, your body will attack this organ because it detects that this organ is not of the body. It doesn't belong, and your immune system will start attacking the organ and trying to get rid of it, and that can be a problem, obviously. But the thing with the organs is over time the body will gain a tolerance for because they're immune suppressing medications you take that sort of tamp down the immune system so that your body doesn't attack the organ. But over time the body can develop a tolerance for the immune suppressing meds, and I think that's what happened with Aaron Eisenberg. Is his body developed a tolerance for the immune suppressing meds, and then they stopped working, and so then the body attacked the donated kidney, and eventually he had to have that kidney removed and had a second transplant to put another transplanted kidney in. But unfortunately the immune suppressing meds still didn't work, and that's why he wound up perishing. Okay. And then there is another one I wanted to address right quick because it has a Star Trek connection with it. And before Hackman and Trachtenberg died, this story, of course, made the rounds. This is from Deadline. Hollywood reacts to Robert Orsi's death. Joe Russo, Lucy Lawless, and more paid tribute. Robert Orsi died in his home in Los Angeles on February 25th, and the tributes remembering the late writer-producer followed. After reports of Orsi's death due to kidney disease first surfaced, people like Joe Russo, Lucy Lawless, and Rob Liefeld have weighed in. Russo took to social media to pay tribute to Orsi, calling him, quote, a generational screenwriting talent and one of the greats. Quote, my first boss in Hollywood said the script for Star Trek was the best he'd ever read, and he wasn't kidding, unquote, said Joe Russo on X. Quote, Robert Orsi was a generational screenwriting talent, and his death at only 51 is a tragic loss because I'm sure there were more masterworks to come. RIP to one of the greats. Xener Warrior Princess star Lucy Lawless also took to social media to pay tribute to Orsi, writing, quote, desperately sorry to hear of Bob's passing. A beautiful, sweet man and outrageously talented. I send my heartfelt condolences to the many people who loved him. Deadpool comic book creator Rob Liefeld said, quote, terrible news, way too young, enjoyed much of his work, RIP. From Dusk Till Dawn, the series, and 911 producer Juan Carlos Cotto wrote on X, quote, we lost a great talent. Moonlight co-creator Trevor Munson shared on X, quote, Robert Orsi had significantly signed on to direct our Western based on the life of Joaquin Murrieta. Would have loved to see what he did with it. RIP to a true talent. This means war and just go with it. Writer Timothy Dowling shared, quote, this is so sad. Bob was a fantastic writer. I had the pleasure of meeting him a few times over the years, talking about working together, gone way too soon, unquote. Fringe producer and writer Zach Stentz remembered Orsi posting on X, quote, I got to know Bob a bit while working on Fringe, an earlier version of the movie that became Star Trek Beyond, and a couple of other things that always found him to be kind and generous to a fault. I'd been meaning to check in on him for a while, but life got in the way, and now I regret it. Quote, I always felt a connection with Bob because we both love Star Trek and cut our teeth on writing teams writing for Kevin Sorbo's syndicated Action Hours. Stintz wrote in a second post on X, quote, he's my favorite thing, and he and Alex wrote the slam bang grab you by the throat opening of Star Trek 2009. Okay. What time? Oh, wow, it's already over an hour. Okay. Well, actually got several stories left, but I'm not going to do them all. Uh, what do I want to focus on here? I'll do say two or three more. Okay, let's look at this right quick. Come on. All right. This is from comicbookmovie.com. Avengers Doomsday leaked concept art seemingly reveals who has been cast as the MCU's new Black Panther. Earlier today, concept art for Avengers Doomsday leaked online, and you can find the full breakdown here. Let me bring up, see if I can find these images. Well, hold on. Okay, well, I'll read the article first. While it's left us with plenty to discuss, the biggest reveal might be who's playing the MCU's new Black Panther. It was last month when we learned of Marvel Studios' supposed plans to recast T'Challa following Chadwick Boseman's death in 2020. There have since been conflicting reports, but the consensus is that Toussaint T'Challa II, the hero's son, will be aged up and take his father's place. Taking a closer look at this concept art for Avengers Doomsday, we see quite clearly that Marvel Studios has used actor Damson Idris's likeness for the new MCU's new Black Panther. That doesn't mean that he's been cast, but it's rare for Marvel Studios to use the likeness of an actor they've not at least spoken to about a role. As we saw in Fantastic Four First Steps artwork that's also leaked, when they don't know who will play someone, the character's likeness is typically based on the comics. It's worth pointing out that Idri responded to the speculation in a now deleted X post on January 17th. When it was put to him that he'd turned down the Black Panther role, the actor responded, quote, "Yes, sir, I turned down 007, a co-lead film with Daniel Day-Lewis, and an Eddie Murphy biopic, too." Idris may well have declined to star in Avengers Doomsday since this artwork was created, but this is enough to make him very likely the front runner for the role. The actor is best known for Snowfall, Black Mirror, and Farming. He's also landed the role alongside Brad Pitt in this summer's F1 movie. Quote, "The truth is, there's no truth to those rumors," Black Panther 3 producer Nate Moore recently claimed. Quote, "Never say never to anything, but we haven't really had a lot of creative conversations with Ryan Coogler yet because he's finishing his film Sinners, which comes out this year." Quote, "We'll get to it into it later this year, but everything you read online is not true. If for no other reason, then we just haven't started on it yet. We are still figuring out again exactly what the next Avengers is going to be, so we haven't had any real conversations. I know there's a lot of chatter online about casting and villains. None of that's true. We just haven't gotten there yet, to be honest, but I'm very excited to start those conversations, hopefully this year. We don't know what the story is, so I couldn't tell you whether or not we're open to recasting. It certainly wasn't our instinct for Wakanda Forever. I'll never say never to anything, but it's too early to talk about any of that stuff. We have to figure out what the story's going to be." And I guess this is the image in particular here. And, I mean, I think he looks the part pretty well. I'm not familiar with the actor really, so I couldn't say, but I mean, I think he has a good look for the role. Okay, so let's see if we can find those other photos. Before I found a link. Is this it? Maybe not. Okay, well, we'll just do it this way. And let me bring this up. Okay, and again, this is comicbookmovie.com. Avengers Doomsday leaked concept art, everything that's revealed from the Fantastic Four's fate to Emperor Doom. Earlier today, concept art from Avengers Doomsday leaked online. Someone is going to be in major trouble for this blunder, especially when it comes from an artist, we won't name them, who has worked on several MCU projects. By now, we're sure you've seen the various pieces doing the rounds on social media, but unless you've taken a really close look, you've likely missed some of the bigger reveals. Those include the likes of Doctor Strange and Yelena Belova being among Doctor Doom's loyal followers, the dire fate of the Fantastic Four, and a weird X-Men cameo, and a wild new status quo for Star-Lord and the Vision. You can read through this Avengers Doomsday breakdown by clicking the next view list buttons below, where you'll also find that must-see artwork before it's taken down. Okay, so we'll just go through some of the things they mention here. Quote, so 5, the Young Avengers and Dupe. So yeah, there's an image. One of the images, it has who all's there? It's got Kate Bishop and Ant-Man's daughter, whatever her name is, Cassie, I think it is, Ms. Marvel, and Wanda's twin sons all at a table together. So obviously a Young Avengers team. We've been hearing rumblings for a while about the Young Avengers or Champions assembling in Avengers Doomsday, and that appears to be official. Star-Lord and Wong are with the team. Oh yeah, that's like Wong was there. And Star-Lord in what appears to be a bar of some sort. That's another thing, is that in the images you see, they have a kind of medieval look to them, almost like the characters are existing in some kind of medieval setting. Like he says they're at a bar. It looks like a tavern almost. And Doom, there's pictures of him on a throne, but instead of being like, like the Emperor of the Empire in Return of the Jedi in this big high tech chamber, it's more like a medieval room where a king would receive guests, that sort of thing. Let me take another drink of water right quick. Okay. And yeah, this character Dupe, who is an obscure X-Men character, he's kind of floating around in the background. Perhaps the biggest talking point is the presence of Dupe, a member of X-Statix. He's an incredibly powerful and mysterious mutant creature, and in the comics speaks his own unique language. We'd guess he's from elsewhere in the multiverse. A Hulk village. Yeah, and again, there's a community of Hulks, basically. And we see who appears to be the Hulk, and there's a She-Hulk. And again, they're in this village that has a kind of medieval sort of feel or look to it. At first glance, it looks like Bruce Banner and She-Hulk are in Latveria alongside Scar. However, look closer, and this artwork is actually full of Hulk, who appears to be in mid-tantrum and mid-transformation. While it's possible Scar has grown up a little since we last saw him, that may be just one of the many medieval Hulks who are helping Bruce and Jennifer Walters get accustomed to their surroundings. Another sketch shows a mysterious character chained up with water pouring over them. Based on the steam rising, we'd bet on that being Johnny Storm, aka the Human Torch, who is likely Doom's captive. 3, Star-Lord's new roommate. Part of the fun with these Avengers movies is seeing unexpected characters share the screen, and that looks set to be the case with the legendary Star-Lord and the White Vision. Somehow it seems they've become roommates. That's surely another development set to be tackled in Vision when the android presumably regains his emotions. With Peter Quill now on Earth and Vision still figuring out who he is, they may have struck up an unlikely friendship. Either way, between this and the Young Avengers artwork mentioned above, Marvel Studios looks set to make good on its promise to put the spotlight back on Star-Lord after Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. 2, Doctor Doom and some familiar faces. So we finally have a first look at Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom, and he looks mighty formidable. He's also not in anything remotely similar to an Iron Man suit, so that's a big win. Marvel Studios appears to have embraced the villain's Latvian heritage, and we also see Doom in what would be his white Emperor Doom costume from the Secret Wars comic miniseries or crossover event. An unknown character has been brought before him, Reed Richards perhaps, but there are other familiar faces. The guard on the right looks an awful lot like Yelena Belova, while Doctor Strange also appears to be part of Doom's court. Could the woman and child on the right be Sue Storm and Franklin Richards? And number one, the MCU's new Black Panther. Much has been said about Marvel's recasting T'Challa after Chadwick Boseman's tragic death. Now it finally seems to be happening. Those scoopers appear unsure whether it's going to be a multiversal variant or an adult Toussaint T'Challa 2. There are several costume designs here, so it remains to be seen which of them the MCU's new Black Panther will don in Avengers Doomsday next year. However, we're far more interested in who appears to be playing him. That is Snowfall and F1 star Damson Idri. Marvel Studios rarely uses actors' likenesses if they're not at least close to being cast, etc., etc. Okay, yeah, so here's the pictures. And there you see Doom on the throne. And as they say, I mean, this doesn't look like Iron Man at all. He does look like Doom, proper Doom. So that's good. And here are the Hulks in this Hulk village. I mean, this looks like a cutscene from I don't know, like a World of Warcraft or something. Okay. Okay, yeah, here's the throne room scene. And again, so we have Doom here. Now, maybe that's Franklin and Sue. Maybe. Don't know. I did notice that this guy, it's maybe not easy to see, but this does look kind of like Doctor Strange. So I do think this is who he is. Um, and this is a woman, other than they say it looks like Yelena. I mean, other than being a woman with blonde hair, I mean, I don't know. I guess it's Yelena, maybe. Yeah, and here's the Young Avengers scene. And there's Wong and Star Lord, and there's Dupe over there kind of hanging around in the background for some reason. So, I mean, it's interesting stuff. Okay, what am I at? I'm at getting to an hour and 20 minutes. I guess I will go ahead and wrap it up. Well, actually, I got one more concerning this Avengers Doomsday stuff. Um, well, it doesn't really seem to say much that I haven't already covered, so I guess I'll leave that. Oh yeah, there is one more. So yeah, let me get this. I had meant to talk about this. And this is from Screen Rant. Brace yourselves, Marvel and DC just announced its next big crossover event. Get ready, Marvel and DC comic fans, because the two titans of superhero comics are finally coming back together. The heydays of Marvel and DC crossovers might be long gone, but both publishers are entering a new era as Marvel and DC are committing to uniting their universes once more. Translation: Cosmic comic sales have gotten so abysmal that they are desperate and are willing to work together again for mutual survival. That's how I read it anyway. At Comics Pro, Marvel Comics editor in chief CB Cebulski and DC Comics editor in chief Marie Javins spoke after the keynote speech and discussed the recent reprint collections DC versus Marvel Omnibus and DC Marvel The Amalgam Age Omnibus. Cebulski noted that it's been over 2 decades since the last DC and Marvel crossover and floated the idea of a modern one. In a moment that shocked the audience, the editors confirmed that there would be two Marvel and DC Comics crossovers later this year, one produced by each publisher. Neither characters nor creative teams were confirmed, but the crossover will indeed be a reality. It comes as no surprise that, as the two biggest publishers of superhero stories, Marvel and DC have a history of using one another's characters. Back in '76, the big two brought the Man of Steel and the iconic Walt Crawler together in Superman Spider-Man, starting a long history of fan favorite tales that bridge the two universes. The publishers had dozens of stories that unite their iconic characters, even fusing them together to create an entirely new universe, an imprint known as Amalgam Comics. However, the fund ended with JLA Avengers in 2003, the last official crossover between Marvel and DC. But this changes everything. For the first time in over 20 years, both Marvel Comics and DC Comics are willing to dip their toes back in the crossover pool and give readers something they haven't read in years. Unfortunately, there's no details to go off just yet, and it's hard to tell if these one shots will be a sequel to JLA Avengers or a continuation of the Amalgam universe. But the fact that both companies are willing to at least try is a monumental thing. If this goes well, this could be the start of even more Marvel DC crossovers. Again, it's too early to tell what's about to come from this crossover. It could very well be just a couple of fun one-offs that Marvel and DC figure would be interesting to try. However, these one-shots could be both publishers trying to gauge interest among fans, and let's face it, most fans would love to see a new Marvel DC crossover. There's an entire generation who missed out on the thrills of seeing Marvel and DC interact, but if fans show the demand is there, this could lead to an exciting new period for both publishers. Fans are going to have to wait a bit longer until they have concrete details about this new crossover, but for now, it's enough to start building the hype that will hopefully show both publishers how badly readers would love to see more stories that bring these two worlds together. Hopefully, Marvel and DC have a big story in mind because there's no doubt expectations are going to be through the roof for this upcoming crossover. Um, as a comic fan and, having enjoyed most of the crossovers they've done over the years, I have to say, my excitement for this is minimal because again, and it goes back to the whole thing of if Kennedy leaves, who cares? If the writing isn't fixed, then who cares if she leaves? Maybe Kurtzman will leave Star Trek, but if the writing isn't improved or fixed, then who cares? It doesn't matter. And it's kind of the same thing here. Okay, great, they're going to do a crossover. Who's going to do it? Like if they who are they going to get? Tom King? If Tom King writes it, it'll be awful. And that's the problem is that I just don't have any faith that they can do something good. Even if it's these characters, Batman and Captain America or whoever interacting. It's still my thought is that it's still not going to be good because the people running these companies now can't do good stuff for the most part. Yes, I mean, most comic creators now, just particularly the writers, like I would imagine they'll get good artists, so at least the art will be good. I assume that might be a foolish assumption, but there are still some good comic artists at DC and Marvel, and I would imagine they would get good ones. But who's going to write these things? I have zero faith in them getting good writers for these things. And if the writing isn't good, it's I don't see how these are going to be good. I mean, with DC, I mean, I couldn't tell you. If I would say go get try and lure Jeff Johns back and have him write it. That would be my thought, but that's probably not going to happen. And at Marvel, I couldn't even tell you who should write it. So I don't know. Uh, I know it's an interesting idea, but I am skeptical that this is actually going to be any good. Uh, but we'll see. Okay. I guess I'm going to go ahead and sign off there. So I will be doing a Trek Talk this coming Tuesday. I'll be covering the original Star Trek episode, Who Mourns for Adonias. That'll be at the usual time, 5 p.m. Tuesday evening. That's 5 p.m. Central Time. And I will not be doing another live stream next Sunday because I will be with my National Guard unit. So it'll be 2 weeks before I'm back here doing this. I want to thank those who tuned in during the live stream and those who will catch on a rewatch. Please do like the stream if you're watching. And please do sub to the channel if you haven't, and check out some of my other videos. And everyone have a good evening, and I will see you Tuesday.